B-Bad and Brandon.
Florida.
Sorry, I
Let
thought
me.
I'd just hit record and mate, we
That's
might get
okay.
started just because I know Johnny's still playing around with some internet issues. But
No worries.
before
Let's rock
I
and roll, brother.
before I rudely interrupted you, you were just telling me how good the gym setup is over there. Like you got a few things shipped in from the US and living in American Samoa, just loving it.
Yep. Yep. Just moved here 2 weeks ago to American Samoa. My wife was born and raised here. I have an obesity rant that I did some many years ago,
Yeah, right.
where I talked about American Samoa. I've been here a few times. I've done seminars at the schools, at the high schools, some for sports performance, some for weight loss. And I was back here guest posing, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago for a bodybuilding show and did some seminars back then. So I have some relationships on the island. Of course, my wife's born and raised here, 12 brothers and sisters, and all their
Oh,
nephews
12
and
brothers and
nieces.
sisters.
Yes, indeed. Big family. It's Samoa.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's Samoa. They don't do anything one at a time. So but I'm enjoying it. We came down over Christmas again and just really loved the place. So we said, hey, let's just sell our home and move down here. So here we are, and
Yeah.
they got everything down here I need. They've got a nice big swimming facility, and they've got indoor pickleball, and they've got gyms. I joined a local gym here. It's got all the equipment I need. So I haven't missed a beat. I just go at a slower pace.
Yeah, that island time's really starting to kick in.
Yes, indeed. I'm enjoying it. That's for sure.
Surely they worship you like a god there. They're looking at you
You know,
going,
they're very kind people
yeah,
here. They're beyond nice. I've been down many times over the years, and they've always appreciated everything that I try and do for them in terms of their health and fitness. Uh, they're very kind, and they follow social media, and so
yep. They
they're
know who
familiar
you
with
are.
yeah, and they're very gracious, and so and I try and do what I can to help the folks here with their
Yep.
strength and conditioning and nutrition, and so it's a good relationship.
Mate, it sounds like you're in a really good like portion of your life, and it almost sounds like now you're in a transition because I guess I'm of the generation that would remember you for your achievements in powerlifting and bodybuilding, but it's now there's this big shift where, as your shirt says, you get vertical. The vertical diet has overtaken that. And was that always the plan? Have you always, because you have gone all in on the vertical diet and it's reaping the results.
Yeah, I never really planned on getting into coaching full time after I was done competing.
Yep.
People just started asking me for help. I have a long history since
Yep.
1988, and when I started competing, and I studied exercise science at the University of Oregon. I got my CSCS and partnered with a PhD RDN. And I had some very high profile clients, probably as a result of all of the social media
Mm.
stuff that happened with Mark Bell, and who was
Yep.
very prolific. And I think people associated me or saw a lot of me at a time when social media was just burgeoning there, back in 2014. And, it's been 10 years ago and longer.
Yep.
2009, 2010 is back when Mark Bell and I got together and started, and Flex Wheeler and I, and all the magazine coverage. And so I just had a lot of exposure at a
That's all.
time when it wasn't diluted. Now I think it's obviously there's some people with some much larger followings, but there's also a lot more people that have some social media presence. So it's kind of hard if you're just starting out, it's kind of hard to establish yourself. But
Yep.
I was largely recognized, and then kind of I think because I'm associated with so many great athletes, Hafthor
Mm.
Bjornsson, Brian Shaw, Mitchell
Mm.
Hooper, Lane Johnson, John Jones in the UFC.
Yeah.
Have had an opportunity to work with some really phenomenal athletes, and so the association, of course, has lent itself well to my notoriety, if you could call it that. And people have reached out to me,
Mm.
some known, some unknown, some for sports, and a lot for just probably the vast majority are just dad bods and soccer moms who hear me on podcasts talking about weight loss,
Yep.
in general health and fitness and blood testing and
Mm.
things that people in their 40s and 50s worry about, sleep and just energy and body composition. And so I've enjoyed working with a lot of people, hundreds if not thousands, through my ebooks and
Yeah.
website.
Oh man,
Yeah,
I mean, I've delved down the rabbit hole of the vertical diet, bought the ebooks and everything. Like, and the results are phenomenal, and it's great to see, especially as I'm sure that you've stepped through different stages of life, that you're reaching a whole different, I guess, different demographic as you step through. And we do actually have some questions from our listeners because they wanted to know more about the vertical
yeah,
diet. So if you don't mind, it's
sure.
why'd you call the diet vertical when it looks like the foundational diet is horizontal and you go vertically with things like rice and more meat and for the certain aims like mass gain or support to support that high intensity and frequency and activity.
I don't know, to be honest with you. It's been so many years now since I originally came up with the idea and launched the ebook. And uh, I'm not even sure if I called it that when I was on Hafthor Bjornson's
Yeah, right.
up in Iceland when I was working with him. And I did that seminar, which probably was it's got over 7 million views now. And so it's probably the most comprehensive coverage of the vertical diet, which kind of started out as people just kept asking me what it is I do, and wanted help, and so I just compiled it all into a document
Mm,
that went down, because it's multifactorial, as you know. It's not just the diet; it's
yep.
sleep and hydration, and of
Hmm.
course nutrition and blood testing, and all the training. Of course, it's very comprehensive, and I added chapters over the years as I received more and more questions and answered them. I continued to expand on the book, and now it's 250 pages with over 200 references to articles and videos and peer-reviewed research. And I partnered again with Dr. Damon McCune, PhD RDN, who was director of dietetics for UNLV and an instructor in the exercise phys department there. And so
Yeah,
I just
wow.
wanted to make sure the information I was providing was scientifically sound. And
Mm,
I've certainly evolved on some topics over the years, as many people have in this
Mm.
industry. Um, and there's been lots of great science. A lot of things we used to think 10 years ago have changed.
mm,
Yep.
And that includes with, domain specific PhDs in
Mm.
certain realms, whether it's exercise phys or nutrition. We've all evolved, as
Any
well as some
notes?
popular.
Any notes you
Hey, how you
changed,
doing, brother?
from the first round to the first edition from 10 years ago to now that are noted that you're like, oh man, I definitely changed that one.
Uh, some big things, and I even did some videos on these. I talked about. I was a big free weight fan,
mm,
and of course now as I've gotten older, I've and I don't recover as well, and the fatigue associated with heavy axial loading movements like squatting and deadlifting. I'm much more amenable to utilizing low fatigue movements such as leg pressing, etc.,
Yep.
to garner the same hypertrophy results, the same strength benefit that applies to force production for speed and sports. I was just an old codger who grew up, under the guise of, just harder is better, and I grinded through, uh, you know, failure plus,
mm.
spotted reps plus
Mm.
eccentric, with your partner pushing down on the weight. And
Oof.
uh, those were the things that we all did back in the 80s and 90s that now
Right.
we understand from the research that probably don't, well, certainly don't give you any better benefit than leaving a rep in the tank, and may even be counterproductive for athletes in particular. So
Yep.
I've certainly evolved on that. And then with respect to nutrition, my foundation is very similar to what I had learned, many years prior. I didn't write the book until I'd already competed for 25 years. And
Yep.
so it's still a very diverse, micronutrient dense diet. It's a large departure from the bro science. I guess you would call it the guru diets from
Mm.
bikini girls with their egg whites and broccoli and whitefish. I've always tried to incorporate, more a broader base of foods, including red meats and fruits and whole eggs and a whole host of carbohydrates. I'm still heavy on carbs for performance.
Mm.
Getting sufficient fats. I've always been a higher protein guy, 30% of the total calories.
Yep.
So those things are still pretty similar. I kind of went down a rabbit hole on seed oils. I did a rant called "The Real Poison That's Killing Us," where I talked about the deep fried foods and the fact that I had enormous amount of digestive distress from those. But
Yep.
as as the information has evolved, we find that it's calories first and foremost,
Yeah.
and that there's they really don't have any evidence of specific harm or toxicity from seed oils. So I've had to bend a little on that particular campaign of mine from many years ago.
Yep.
Other than that, I think that we've been really consistent and gotten great results from what was already tried and true and what was scientifically supported by my partnership with my RDN PhD co-author David McKeown. So I think we could dive into any of those topics, but I think it's been pretty consistent overall.
Do you think you got a lot of benefit and I guess without really knowing, but your holistic approach in the ebook of not just, the diet, but you mentioned the sleep, the training, the hydration, by combining all that and then I guess promoting it as the diet, you actually got a lot more buy-in where people were able to take all the advice, but tick off other boxes unknowingly.
Yeah, and again, it's multifactorial. All of those things work together. They're legs on a stool. If you've got a great diet and poor sleep, good luck to you. If you've got great sleep and a poor diet, I mean, it just doesn't. And the exercise component, not just the cardiovascular exercise we talk about in terms of the 10-minute walks, but the training stimulus. And what's interesting is of course, Mark Bell and I and others, we've been talking about this for 10 years, how important hypertrophy is. And Mark even coined the term "strength is never a weakness." And we saw a lot of influencers that are popular today come up talking mostly about cardio, mostly about nutrition. And now we see very popular influencers, Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, Dr. Peter Attia, and others who focus on strength now. They had gone through a period of time where they did a significant amount of energy restriction, kind of the Walter Longo, Dr. David Sinclair, longevity folks that were doing the lower protein, the lengthened the fasting, the extended fasting, not just the 16/8, but the alternate day fasting or the multiple day fasting. And they were claiming that those had superior benefits. And what we found out is that those, even the extended fastings, the alternate day and multiple day fastings and the low protein diets were causing people to lose muscle tissue. And we were discovering that sarcopenia was a huge problem, especially in the elderly population north of 50 years old. And so now everybody's on board. Right now, you see where the wave has crested for getting sufficient protein and lifting weights, which I think Dr. Stu Phillips up there at McMaster's University in Canada has just noted recently that the American Heart Association has said that hypertrophy training, resistance training, is equivalent to cardiovascular training for disease outcomes. And so we're even getting, the major organizations in terms of heart health to recognize that lifting weights is important and probably more important, although a combination of the two is certainly better than one or the other.
That's incredible.
What I like recently, Stan, I was listening to a Huberman Lab podcast, and they had, I wish I could quote the person who they on, but they're talking about food and diet and gut health and sort of things. And then they started talking about some new research that's out that talked about the benefits of a 10-minute walk after eating. And I'm like, I remember watching some podcast long time ago with you and Mark talking about 10-minute walks back then.
Again, we Mark and I certainly popularized that amongst the meatheads, but 10-minute walks has been going on for thousands of years with great benefit, moving after meals. And I've made some pretty extraordinary statements about the benefits of 10-minute walks that, there's some nuance to those in terms of blood sugar control, et cetera. But I found them more than anything just to be sustainable. I thought I've been working with bodybuilders, powerlifters, people in the physique figure bikini industry, training athletes at a very high level, up to and including pros back in the early 90s. And all throughout my career, I've worked with some great athletes. But with weight loss in particular, and I've worked at box gyms since I was in college, training ordinary folks for weight loss. I've just found that, and what we now know from all the research is that compliance is the science, the term I coined so many years ago, that dietary adherence is the single most important factor for being able to maintain weight loss over the long term, irrespective of what diets works for you, whether it's intermittent fasting or keto or paleo or vertical. And I just found that people were not generally able to adhere to what we traditionally prescribed for exercise, which was go to the gym and put 40 minutes or an hour on the treadmill. That's not sustainable. Nobody does that. It's not enjoyable. It's not particularly effective, to be honest, if we wanted to get deep into the, and talk about the constrained energy model of energy expenditure. But it's just not something anybody does for any period of time. And if you're a personal trainer, which I have been for 30 years, and you start putting a client on these types of exercises, or even I'll say the CrossFit style, blow your whistle, the burpees and what else there, the kinds of things where people just sweat and breathe hard a lot. That's not something that most people, the dad bods of soccer moms, look forward to, that it's going to be sustainable. They're not going to tell their friends, oh my God, you got to come down and work out with me. It's grueling. And it's not, we know now that whether it's HIIT or it's LISS, if it's low intensity steady state, or if it's high intensity workout, they have equivalent weight loss outcomes. But which one is more sustainable? And there's barriers to entry to getting in the car, driving to the gym, logging 40 minutes on a treadmill, which is nauseatingly boring. And people will very quickly downsize that part of their day and end up getting preoccupied with life, kids, job, etc. But the 10-minute walks, to go back, I didn't mean to get too distracted.
No, we love it. We love it.
We love it. Many distractions.
You can do them, and that's my big thing, is compliance is the science. I think it's 1% information and 99% execution. It's just being able to do the things that are necessary on both ends of the energy equation. And 10-minute walks were simple. You can get up in the morning and do it. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. Just take a 10-minute walk, and then you can come home and shower and get your breakfast. You can do it at night before, after dinner. I traveled a lot. I've been in 17 countries in all 50 states, doing well over 250 seminars now over the last 5-6 years. And I've lived out of hotels and, out of luggage, and I'm able to take those walks everywhere I go. I'm able to continue to do 30 to 40 minutes of cardio in addition to getting my 4+ workouts a week. And, I love doing that. And so it's easy for me to talk about that. But most clients, you and I both know, we all know, most people don't enjoy going to the gym. It's not something they look forward to.
It's only us.
I'm trying to make the weightlifting portion as easy to comply with as possible. I'm trying to find exercises at the gym that they'll actually do, that they enjoy, that they'll progress over time, and just get them to show up twice a week if I can, but the 10-minute walks, along with a sensible meal plan, it was mostly for compliance.
Yeah. Do you enjoy, because I like to say you're ahead of your time, Stan, like ahead of the research. Like, it's stuff that you knew you were saying 10 years ago, and now you start seeing noted, educated people coming out with research, and you go, fucking knew it. I knew I was right 10 years ago. Do you enjoy that? Do you take a moment and sit back and sort of enjoy that?
And I'm not the only one. There's a bunch of them out there that weren't necessarily bookworms. I've kind of been into the research side since college, because I did get a science degree, and I did spend 2 years in post-grad, and scrolling through microfiche and reading all of the studies and all the stuff. So I've been a bit of a bookworm myself, but I was also, just obsessive about the training You hear really smart. It's what I like now that was different from back then when there was no internet. Is although we have more bad information, we have a lot of really good information, and we're seeing domain-specific credentialed professionals, the Lane Nortons of the world, the Greg Knuckles from Mass Research Review, world champion natural power lifter who's also just an extraordinary intellect, with a master's degree, and they put out fantastic information. And Lane as well with a PhD in nutrition. And there's many others, Mike Israetel, people with PhDs who are just as obsessed with weightlifting as we are. Yeah. And I think that we've benefited from their devotion to applying their knowledge to their passion, which is also our passion. And so it's low hanging fruit now, man. If you just tune into the right people, it's just spoon fed to you on social media every day in 90-second bite-sized pieces that anybody could get up to speed very quickly if they don't get distracted by the charlatans, which it appears as though that's 90% of what I do is what I call the shiny object syndrome, is re-educate folks and steer them to the right individuals that have been distracted by people making claims. You mentioned Huberman, and he's been getting a lot of people have been hitting him pretty hard lately because he'll use mechanistic data. He and others, it's not just Huberman. Dr. Peter Attia did it for years. He's evolved quite a bit. He used to believe in the carbohydrate insulin model and the intermittent fasting and the keto. It was obsessive about it, claiming it had some superior benefit, when in fact now he's evolved to say that it's the calories and it's the weightlifting and it's the effort and intensity and consistency. But Huberman and others, they'll use mechanistic data, and they'll use animal research, and then take these giant logical leaps and make these claims about outcomes that just aren't meaningful, to be honest with you. And we could go down a whole host of items that they've made claims about that really just don't stand up to scrutiny, and they just don't move the needle. And I'm more interested in giving people things that actually get them to their goals, that mean something, because the meat on the bone.
The challenge with people like Huberman, though, and others, they've got a big audience, though, right?
Yes, and the process of unlearning takes much longer, and people are quick to use Huberman and others. And I just, his name's out there, but there's many others. I talked about Dr. Walter Longo's, low protein research, all on animals, none on humans. And there's many others. But lots have evolved. I think Thomas DeLauer's done a great job recently of talking to a lot of people about the things that they've changed their mind on. And I really enjoy listening to those, even including names escaping me now, but there's a lot of them he's had on his show recently, who are PhDs in their particular field. And this is important to remember. And I was going to say that people are quick to use an appeal to authority to reference somebody who they've gotten their information from, and stand on that as their reasoning. But appeal to authority, as we all know from the hierarchy of evidence, is way down on the bottom rung, right down there with anecdotes and testimonials, and probably even below rat studies. But the problem with these appeals to authority is that a lot of these authority figures that they reference aren't domain-specific professionals. And that's what Huberman's getting beat up about now, is that he's outside of his specific area of expertise and education. And even, brilliant, who's the psychologist, he's got the book 12 Rules for Life,
Jordan Peterson.
Dr. Jordan Peterson made some nutrition comments, and Lane Norton had to come on and say, look, I respect you for what you do very well, but you stay in your lane. You're making claims that aren't supported by the evidence. And it happened more recently, even with Gary Brecka and Dana White was making claims about, reducing cancer by 70% because he took a 1-week fast, and there's no evidence to that. And
how do you measure that?
And Lane had to come on again and say, look, Dana, I love the UFC. I love what you do over there, but please, leave the nutrition stuff to the nutrition professionals. And that's why I partnered with a PhD RDN, because I have, a science degree, and I have certainly plenty of credits in exercise science and nutrition to speak to, but I'm not a a master's or a PhD in either of those fields. And so where I have a lot of experience, most certainly, and I've learned a lot of lessons personally that I can share with people, but I have to make sure and be respectful and give credit to the folks who have done the research and provided that information to us. So you do have to, and even when you say something that is generally agreed upon by the majority of the people in a particular field, you'll get tons of comments from folks saying, well, it worked for me. Or what about I wrote an article 10 years ago about, and I referred to the whatabouts. And everybody's like, what about this, what about that? And I'm like, it generally comes down to anecdotes and testimonials, and sometimes those are powerful. We know that placebo is a thing. It does work.
Yeah, 100%. And mate, how much do you still enjoy and have time set aside for your own research and adventure of knowledge gain through the day and through the week?
Yeah, I love it. I'm obsessed. I'm addicted to social media. I have a whole list of people that I follow. I subscribe to. I watched all their videos. I read all of their content. I've mentioned some of their names. Dr. Andy Galpin, of course. Mass Research Review, and Alan Flanagan does a fantastic job with Alinea Nutrition. He's a PhD in nutrition who used to be an attorney. He's just on another level in terms of his. It's like a Mensa level genius as it is, and then for him to put forth all of the literature that he puts, that he breaks down, and Lane's doing that as well now in partnership and collaboration with others. People go in and they explain the research to us. It's one thing to reference a study. It's another thing to have read it in its entirety and to understand it. I took statistics in college, and I understand that there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. And so people will reference the same piece of research with completely different opinions on it, and come to different conclusions about what the research said. And that can get confusing for the layman, not to know. And people will read books by, say, Dr. Stephen Gundry, or who's the carbohydrate insulin guy that is always talking about, you raise your insulin, you won't be able to burn fat. There's others, and they'll read that book as though it's solid information. Well, there's an organization called redpenreviews.org. Redpenreviews.org has about, I think, 7 PhD nutrition researchers on staff. They buy all these popular books and they go through and read them, and they actually look at the claims and the references that were made in the book to try and support those claims. And they find that the vast majority of those, I think Robert Lustig recently was, Elaine Norton did a deep dive into all of the false claims that he's made.
Wow.
And you can go through there, and they have some of the New York Times bestsellers written by some very popular, and they'll tell you that their scientific accuracy is like 25%, and they make a host of claims that aren't supported by the research. And I think that both Lustig and others have been exposed recently in interviews with actual credentialed experts. And so people are starting, whether or not people watched those, they're kind of boring, to watch the breakdowns of what they said and what was evidence-based and what was just completely made up.
But see, that's even like,
you just don't end up on that website.
But that's actually so interesting. I think even for like a general population person, if they pick up a book and then like, that just sounds like reality TV. I don't understand how people don't love that. Hey,
it becomes a Bible to them. And look, I'm speaking about all of this from my own glass house. I was there. I've been. I already acknowledge I went down the rabbit hole with seed oils, and I don't eat them, and I don't recommend them to my clients. But I can't say they're toxic. This evidence just isn't there, and we do see that when you replace saturated fat with polyunsaturated fats, it does reduce cardiovascular disease risk. And so that's a whole nother topic that we can get into that's really hot right now, and as well. But I've read Gary Taub's book and thought it was extraordinary. He's a journalist. He's not a nutritionist. And it turns out that his book is one of the ones, Good Calories, Bad Calories, I think it was his book, that they subsequently did a study. It was a Stanford study called the Diet Fits Trial with over 600 participants for a year. And Gary Taub's organization was part of the people who funded the trial. And they discovered that, in fact, no, low fat, high fat, low carb, high carb. For weight loss, if you control for calories and protein, the diets are equivalent. And insulin is not the determining factor for whether you're going to gain or lose weight in a diet. And then organizations like redpenreviews.org went in and analyzed his book and looked at the references and found out that they were highly biased, if not completely inaccurate. And Nina Teicholz was another one, and I read her book and I thought it was fantastic. I was all gung ho on Nina Teicholz's book. It's an extraordinary read. Unfortunately, she does the same thing. She demonizes organizations that she, I think, cherry picks information about. It includes the 7-country studies with Ansel Keys. If you've never actually read it or understand his research, then you're going to be inclined to be, to believe things that other people have said. And that's a lot of the stuff that I learned from Alan Flanagan at Linear Nutrition. When you go in and you actually read the research and look at the history and the timeline. But we're in that conspiracy theory mode where people like Nina can make these claims and say they're trying to fool you and the big pharma's out to kill you and all this other stuff. And hey, you can despise big pharma and Monsanto and still believe that the dietary recommendations are good recommendations, and we're not following them is the problem. That getting a diverse diet of lean proteins and lots of fruits and vegetables, and minimizing saturated fats for those people who are susceptible to high LDL, and not overeating. Those are still great recommendations. The diets like the Mediterranean diet do still consistently show the best health outcomes, and anything compared to the standard American diet is going to look great. I've blasted through a lot of topics without a whole lot of specificity, but it's just to say that there are a lot of popular people out there making a ton of claims that when you really dig into the science, which scientists have done, you'll find that there's plenty of support for the solid recommendations of mostly whole foods, mostly fruits and vegetables, leaner proteins, and maintaining a reasonable body composition, getting adequate sleep and low stress.
Sounds simple.
It really is, simple, not easy. Simple, not easy.
That's a really
and as
good way
Lane
to put
says, it's not sexy,
Yeah.
And I said that in my obesity rant 7 years ago. I said that it's move more, eat less, and it's truthful, but it's not useful. And some people have higher hunger signaling that's hormonally based. That's leptin and ghrelin, and you can't compare your deck of cards to their deck of cards and blame people, blame the victims. It's not their fault, but it is their responsibility in order to try and lose weight. And the only way to do it is to maintain a calorie deficit through whatever dietary pattern allows you to adhere to be the least restrictive to you, so you can stick to it for an extended period of time, and to stop trying to play pin the tail on the donkey and blame things like fructose or insulin, or they're just tag words that people have profited on. There's plenty of grifters in the industry selling you something that is just not factually based, and we have tons of evidence, human randomized controlled trials, epidemiology, Mendelian randomization, which is genetic research. We have tons of research now that compels us to make sensible decisions, and I think these people should and are being called out for bad information that they're providing, and I've mentioned a lot of the names already. So,
if you had a crystal ball, who do you reckon gets it wrong 10 years from now? We look back 10 years from now, or anything that we're doing, and you go, oh, we should have, that one was a bit off. Is there anything you
I
can
don't
see
know.
that's going on, or that's a bit of a big
Well, I'll
ask?
tell you what I think has happened more recently, which has been, I mean, it's been huge. We've, I think, the science has given us the information that we need to be confident in a lot of the stuff that we already discussed, a lot of the stuff that's out there. But as mentioned, it's once somebody says it, it's much harder to disprove it, to get out and get the information to people. The Liver Kings of the world, they have millions of followers. Eddie Abu's another one now who is made a whole bunch of claims. Gary Brecka made a whole bunch of claims that just aren't scientific, but they have millions of followers. And so, it's so hard to educate those folks as to what the reality is. But there are people doing it. They just aren't as popular. Yeah. So I don't think that we're going to discover anything magical in the next 10 years that we don't already know. There's been millions and millions of dollars poured into research that's gone on for decades that we're reaping the benefits of. And we have, as mentioned, multiple lines of converging evidence between randomized controlled trials, epidemiology, and Mendelian randomization that tells us a lot of what we need to know. And we have 100-plus-year-old folks running around who have been on the Mediterranean diet or some version of that for many, many decades now. And we know what we need to do. And people who are overweight, they know why they're overweight. It's not that they don't know that they're overeating and that fast food is bad. It's not confusing to them that the ultra-processed, hyper-palatable, calorie-dense foods are bad. It's just that, what do you do about that? How do you stop eating them when particularly if you're, your socioeconomic status or your food environment, with a fast food place on every corner, and it's more than just a simple calories equation, because it's more than just hunger. It's boredom. It's stress. It's trauma. There's a whole host of reasons why people overeat. Social situations, etc. So it's multifactorial. But back to your original question, what do I see in the next 10 years? We're already seeing it right now, and that's with the advent of the SGLT2 inhibitors, or the GLP-1 agonists. I'm sorry. The semaglutides, the Ozempic and Wegovy, and now tirzepatide. I think that the effectiveness of those products, which they're extraordinarily effective, and this isn't to speak of people's opinion in terms of the health consequences. I'm just saying that they're extraordinarily effective for weight loss. We see 2-year trials with long-term weight loss adherence in the general population is around 2% weight loss is able to be maintained over a 2-year period. And these medications now are anywhere from 17, 18%, all the way up with tirzepatide to 23% sustainable weight loss over a 2-year period. What does that tell us? That tells us what we already discussed and what we already know, that hunger is the cause of obesity, of overeating. That's the reason people overeat, is because they're not satiated, and those ultra-processed, hyperpalatable foods bypass the satiety signal. And Stu Phillips' research, again, I think he was the one who put out the study comparing eating, which is no rocket science conclusion, but comparing the consumption of mostly whole foods to hyperpalatable ultra-processed foods, and the ultra-processed foods people would consume in excess of 500 additional calories a day. They just aren't full. The leptin and ghrelin signals aren't. You bypass your hunger signaling with those ultra processed foods. People are over consuming them consistently, and that's why they gain weight, and that's why things like diabetes, etc., start to take hold. Is what we call what's it called, nutrient or calorie toxicity. Energy toxicity, right? And some people have more ability to gain more body fat than others before they start storing it as visceral fat around the organs, which leads to, your pancreatic fat, your liver fat first, NAFLD, and then pancreatic fat, which causes insulin resistance and diabetes. It's not sugar that causes diabetes. It's an excess of calories that ultimately starts to destroy your pancreas. And once your fat storage and your muscle storage is full, your blood sugar is going to stay elevated, and then you're going to start damaging your endothelial lining, and it makes it more susceptible to fatty deposition, cholesterol, ApoB in particular, the atherogenic particles on your LDL, and that's how, it's multifactorial, but that's how cardiovascular disease progresses, and how people, our number one killer. And then cancer, it's a 200% increase in cancer is our number two killer from obesity as well, particularly, visceral fat. So we know, what causes it. It's just now, I think, what has to happen over the next 10 years. We know medicinally, we know medically how to I don't always say how to make a significant impact. I don't want to use the word cure because you're on medication. We know what works. We know that blunting hunger signals or improving satiety, and currently with the medications, the SGL or the GLP-1 agonist, semaglutide, that works. Okay, those work. There's side effects associated with them, as there are with any medication, and it's the individual's. It's between that individual and their doctor to determine what the cost benefit rate analysis is on that. What are the side effects? And because we know that obesity, particularly morbid obesity, dramatically increases your cardiovascular disease risk and cancer risk. And so if the side effects of the medication are less severe than the pathologies that are associated with obesity, then that's a decision for the individual to make. And who am I? You've got people giving their teenage daughters birth control pills. You've got postmenopausal women on estrogen therapy. You've got all sorts of people on blood pressure medication, which is necessary and beneficial for a lot of people, but there are side effects associated with that. The number one prescribed medications for women is thyroid medication. That's not without its own side effects associated with that. But everybody makes their own cost benefit analysis as to what medications they need for what ailments that they have, and whether or not it'll improve their life. And I leave that up to those individuals. So I'm not making a blanket statement about the use of it. I'm just saying, why do they work and why are they so effective is because they help satiate you. They eliminate the food noise. You're not constantly thinking about food and over consuming food. And so I think now where we've been headed over the last couple of years now, and where we're going full force right now, is what I said in my obesity rant. It's about changing behavior. And Lane Norton just within the last week said that he wishes he had a psychology degree, because he thinks that is where this battle needs to be won. It's in helping people change their behavior. We have some tools in our toolbox. They're not great tools. Eat more protein, eat more fiber. We have a satiety index that shows us that certain foods keep us full longer, things like boiled potatoes and oranges. And I've talked about all of those things. And that's the toolbox that we have, to reduce ultra processed foods, to provide swaps to where we might have historically had ice cream in the refrigerator. We get rid of that, keep it out of the house, create a barrier to entry to have to get in your car and drive to get it, and then provide something more accessible that you'll eat in its place that might prevent you from getting in the car and going to get it, like fat-free Greek yogurt and berries, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, maybe even a popcorn is one of Lane Norton's favorites. You need something alternative, something to satisfy that hedonistic, that desire to chew on something while you're watching Netflix at night, when most people overeat calories is at night. I think that's where we're headed. I'd like to see something happen that maybe was anywhere near as effective as the semaglutide medicines in getting people, helping people learn the behaviors and create the habits, hence the 10-minute walks, hence the, the swaps. And I'm trying to help people create the habits. I had a client today. It said that for Father's Day, they usually go to the in-laws' place and they cook up this huge meal with, bacon and sausage and lots of butter and cake and whipped cream. And, how do you answer that? I'm extreme. I'll eat before I go and then probably not have anything there. That's what I would do. But that's probably not very reasonable recommendation for most people. They want to go to these events and they want to be able to have, you tell them maybe try and eat less of it or try and focus more on the lean proteins. And I mean, it's hard. How do you get in these social situations around all this food? When you go to eat pizza, how do you stop after 2 pieces? I mean, it's damn near impossible. When you sit down, you eat pizza till it's gone.
Yeah.
And the only way you can not eat the whole pizza is if there's somebody there to eat the other half, or if there's 4 people there to eat a quarter each. And that's the way it works. And I understand that. I've lived it, and I understand what it's like to be hungry. I dieted for bodybuilding shows and got down to, very low, 5, 4, whatever % body fat. And I remember, this is why I have empathy for my overweight clients who have to go on a diet. Even though they're overweight, they experience an extraordinary amount of hunger. And I would diet for shows, and I can remember, at some point when your body fat got to a certain percentage, or just when you're eating, very low calories, I remember going to bed and just dreaming about food. I would just lay there and I'd picture the pizza going through the conveyor and the cheese bubbling up and the pepperoni curling around the edges and browning just the way I like it, right? I always tell them to put my pizza through slower or a second time because I want it, well done. I want the cheese to be brown and bubbling. Yeah. And I would sit there and literally lay there, and that's all I could think about. It was just hunger pangs, 24/7 for, how long? 4, 6, 7 weeks, when you're at that very lean state, trying to get even leaner. And nowadays, the guys diet longer. I used to only have to diet for 10 or 12 weeks, and I could get into shape because I was in pretty good shape. Now, especially women, they'll diet for 6 freaking months and have that hunger. It's overwhelming. Discipline is not an effective strategy for weight loss. You'll lose that battle every time. You will absolutely lose that battle. Your body will get what it wants. And so you have to eat, you have to find foods that are more voluminous and less calorie dense so that people can continue to eat, but not net out the number of calories that keep them in a surplus. Salads is a good. I have this whole dinner salad that I propose to all of my clients because you can sit there for half an hour straight and eat a salad with, fat-free cheese and cucumber and tomatoes and strawberries diced up. And I like the crunchy lettuce. I don't like the spinach. Kind of tastes like dirt to me. And so I want to, I want to give them some sort of satisfactory feeling. The fat-free Greek yogurt and blueberries or strawberries is another fantastic option. I try and provide them alternatives that make their diet somewhat enjoyable so that they can become part of a lifestyle that they can sustain long term. It can't be some short-term intervention with egg whites and white fish and broccoli. It's not going to work.
That does not appeal at all.
I don't want to eat that. That's not for me. I like the pizza.
I think the next 10 years is going to be psychological. It's not going to be physical.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, everyone can sustain a diet, and like we're coaches, we coach people and guided them a little bit, and then it's the same problem. Like if they can't overcome the stuff that's going on up here, like they'll always hit a wall, and then eventually they go back to where they used to be, right?
Oh yeah, it's if you binge for a weekend, then it's like, oh shit, and then everything goes to hell, and you stop training and you stop, dieting. And that's why I got to tell you, I don't do weekly check-ins. I require daily information. I require a picture of each meal daily, the morning body weight, and the morning hours of sleep. Weekly, I get a waist measurement and a progress picture. But if I don't get meals daily and I just check on somebody once a week, they might have completely gone off the rails, or they'll ghost me and I won't hear from them at all.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, 100%. That's why my hope with the Ozempic of the medication weight loss, whilst I agree and see it can be a great pathway for some people to course correct and lose some weight if they aren't addressing and creating healthy habits whilst this medication is working. At some point in time, they go off the medication, I'm assuming.
Agreed.
And then what happens next?
You're 100% right.
Right back to where
You're
they used to
100%
be.
right. What we know from the research is 70% of them gain the weight back.
Yeah,
that's what we know.
Yeah.
No different than any other diet, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, I don't have the research to suggest that people who go on the vertical diet can maintain their weight loss for 2 years. Nobody does. Nobody in the intermittent fasting world, nobody in the keto world. All of those diets work. 6 out of 7 people who go on a diet lose weight. But the percentage of recidivism goes up over time, 50% the first year, 60%, 70% the second year. And within 3 years, 80, 90+% of the people have gained the weight back. So none of us have the long-term solution. All of us can claim that we've helped people lose weight. But again, testimonials, what's that worth if the individual doesn't have some sort of some ability to adhere to that long term?
Yeah, and then a complete lifestyle change that involves everything. I personally hope that the doctors that are prescribing said medication to these people out there that are, stretching and looking for help and guidance, it's not just here medication, but have you considered a walk? Have you considered some ideas around food? Have you considered a gym? If not, maybe you considered just some squats and some push-ups to grab some momentum of exercise, that they still have that conversation and support the medication with it. Is what I would love to hear.
Yeah, my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, they came out and visited, and she struggled with her weight, as has her daughters. This is a very personal example.
Yep.
And they came out, and I've been a nutrition coach for years. They've never asked me a single question about weight loss, and they've struggled with weight for their whole lives. But they came out and visited me in Vegas a couple months ago, and the conversation came up, and they obviously it's something that's very emotional to them. They've roller coasted on diets for all their lives. And so they asked, and I said, look, it's not a discipline issue. It really isn't. It's not, nobody's to blame here. It's a hormonal issue. It is hunger signaling. It is increased leptin resistance and ghrelin sensitivity. And they never feel satiated. They never feel satiated, certainly not for an extended period of time. And they've got food noise constantly, thinking about food. And their food choices are poor. There's no question about that. But they're hungry all the time. And fortunately, before my sister-in-law spoke to me, she'd spoken to a doctor before she left Iowa to come visit. And the doctor said, okay, here's what I need you to do before I can prescribe you the medication. Just like you said. Here was an excellent doctor. Said, I need you to join a gym, start an exercise program, meet with this dietitian and get on a diet. I need to see that you're adhering and that you can lose some weight. Give me 2%. Can I get 2%? And once you've accomplished that, then I'll give you help to get you the rest of the way there. But I'll know that you'll have established the behaviors and you'll have the knowledge necessary to understand what it takes for long-term dietary adherence. So you're not just, some people can go on this medication and keep eating shit, but just less shit because they're full. And they'll lose weight. We saw that with the McDonald's diet. We saw it with the 7-Eleven diet. We saw it with the Twinkie diet. We have tons of studies where people have eaten crappy food and lost weight. And by the way, improved all their health markers as a result of the weight loss itself, irrespective of diet. I talked about this on Tom Bilyeu's podcast some years ago, and people just went ape shit. They just absolutely eviscerated me on social media, because I said 95% of health benefits are realized from weight loss itself, irrespective of diet. And that's not just me saying that. That's what the research shows. From blood pressure to blood sugars to cholesterol, all of those things improve in your biomarkers from the weight loss, regardless of what you were eating.
Yeah.
And what they clip off on the social media clip where they showed me talking about that is the part where I said, I would never recommend a McDonald's diet.
Yeah.
For a host of reasons. One, you can't adhere to it due to satiety issues, but another one because your micronutrient profile, ultimately, I think you'll end up with micronutrient deficiencies, and the higher saturated fat diets for a lot of people do increase LDL and therefore cardiovascular disease risk. So, you know, that was what you said is absolutely true, and that was a great doctor making the recommendation to her. And I think now that she's succeeded with what was recommended, that she's on the medication and having extraordinary results, as most people do on the medications.
It's just unfortunate though that like a lot of the time we'll look at that situation and go, oh, it was the medication, but we know it was the medication that just helped it along the way. It was all the habits that they created beforehand in that situation. So I really hope, you know, people look at that and go, cool, it wasn't just the medication.
Yeah. And, you know, some people should go on blood pressure medication if they have high blood pressure until such time they can lose weight and control it and then titrate off of it over time. And I gave you a number of examples of other medications that people go on that they should go on. Metformin's another example. It's very beneficial for people with diabetes, but it's something you can go off if you lose enough body weight. And what we see now, and I'm trying to remember who the doctor was, Simon Hill interviewed him, and he talked about the twin cycle hypothesis, which is what we just described earlier, whereas as you gain weight, visceral fat in particular, and you fill up your fat stores, then eventually you start to get NAFLD and visceral fat, which spills over into pancreatic fat. They've found that in order to reverse type 2 diabetes, it's not eliminating sugar. That doesn't reverse type 2 diabetes. Eliminating sugar helps reduce the symptoms of high blood sugars, which you don't want circulating through your bloodstream for an extended period of time because it damages the endothelial lining. But in order to actually reverse type 2 diabetes, for those people who haven't already, whose pancreas hasn't already failed, 7% weight loss can significantly reduce like 50% of NAFLD. Of 15% weight loss, they have seen consistently restore pancreatic beta cell function in type 2, insulin-dependent type 2 diabetics. Presuming you maintain the weight loss. You gain the weight back, you're going to have a recurrence of the diabetes. And now for those people who've had, you know, severe diabetes for an extended period of time and the beta cells of the pancreas have failed and died, you can't, you know, restore them. But there are people who haven't had diabetes for that long or are pre-diabetic who can improve and restore beta cell function in their pancreas. So that's about a 15% weight loss. And that's not easy, but it's also, I mean, for a 300-pound person, that's 45 pounds. I mean, that seems achievable to all of us because we're in this industry. And but that would be a pretty good goal to shoot for, you know, at least initially. And that's what I ask of my big clients, you know, Hafthor Bjornsson, Brian Shaw. In the off season, I have them periodize their weight, and that's the number I put on it, 7%. And what I find is that in their blood work, because I have them get blood work as I did monthly throughout their competitive career, and I did throughout mine. Hafthor was 440 pounds when I started working with him. I brought him down to the mid 390s. And we saw a dramatic improvement in liver enzymes, in HA1C, in blood pressure. Matter of fact, Hafthor Bjornsson is 404 pounds right now. He posted his blood pressure yesterday on his Instagram, which I reposted on mine, on my stories. I think it was somewhere in the 120s over 76 at 404 pounds.
Wow.
There's a lot of things that go into that. Obviously, I mentioned that at 440, that's hard to do. But 404 is a 7% weight loss from when he was in his last strongman competition when he weighed 440. So he lost the weight. His sleep is big. Sleep apnea resolution is huge for blood pressure. It's probably 20 points. Obviously, insulin resistance is huge for blood pressure. If you're suffering from high blood sugar and high insulin as a result, insulin increases blood pressure. And so, you know, that's why we do the 10-minute walks with him. because it really helps with postprandial glycemia, and which then therefore reduces the amount of insulin that's released, and it helps his blood pressure. Exercise, of course, is great, but the post-meal walk in particular helps with his blood pressure for that reason. It blunts the peak and duration of the blood sugar elevation. So he benefits from that. Vitamin D3 was another one that we did with him. Isometric exercises. Oddly enough, you can get up to 10 points of systolic blood pressure reduction from regularly doing isometrics, wall sits, planks, a leg extension hold, grip strength. You can get one of those grippers and do the grippers maybe every other day for 90 seconds, 4 reps or 4 sets of each, a wall sit and a plank. Can reduce blood pressure by up to 10 points, which exceeds that of cardiovascular exercise. Running and jogging gave about a 6-point systolic blood pressure reduction, whereas the isometrics gave a 10-point isometric reduction. In the research that Dr. Gil Carvalho from his website, what is his website? He has a nutrition website, Dr. Gil Carvalho. Nutrition Made Simple, I believe is his YouTube. He does a fantastic job as well. Extraordinary PhD, MD, does a fantastic job. So another good resource for people to binge watch. But those are all probably the top 4 things. I have a high blood pressure quick fix kit, obviously in the Vertical Diet 4.0 ebook that my clients utilize, as well as a high blood sugar quick fix kit, which is largely weight loss, to be honest with you. Where I talk about all of these things for people who have who suffer from these pathologies and want to make improvements in them.
That's incredible, man.
I love it. Mate, that isometric stuff, that's still got me mind blown. That's incredible. And like, that's way easier than going for a run too.
Way easier. Way easier. And look, I'm not people have pinned me as an anti-cardio guy. That's never been the case. I've just said that more cardio doesn't equate to more weight loss and may even be counterproductive because we mentioned earlier the constrained energy model, what they call compensation, where people go out and crush themselves doing battle ropes and burpees, come home and sit more and eat more because they're tired and hungry. And your non-exercise activity is a much better place to invest your energy expenditure, and controlling calories is a much better place. And so I do 30 to 40 minutes of cardio a day, and I recommend it to all my clients. I just do it in the form of 3 brisk 10-minute walks. That's 210 minutes a week. That exceeds the American Heart Association's 150-minute recommendation. So I'm not an anti-cardio guy. And I like to see a HIIT session at least, and I also like to see at least 2 hypertrophy workouts for all of my clients, from even the 60, 70-year-old with 30 extra pounds on them. That's the protocol. It's a sensible diet plan. It's sleep optimization. It's 3 10-minute walks a day. It's 1 HIIT session a week, and it's a couple of hypertrophy sessions a week. And I try and get compliance on those things, as mentioned, on a daily basis with by having them send me pictures of the meals and track their step count and use whatever meal tracker, MyFitnessPal or whatever, so I can see that they're complying, because that, to me, compliance is the science. That's the most important thing.
What's the wildest food you've been sent and you're like, oh, come on, what are you doing today?
Hey, I'll call her out. This is Kennedy Blades. I work with the U.S. Women's Olympic Wrestling team. And Kennedy is just a young phenom. She was like a high school phenom and a junior phenom of Junior Olympics, and now she just qualified for the Olympics in wrestling. And she's underweight. She needed to add weight. And so I went down to Arizona, where she trains out of there at the University of Arizona. And I sat with her and I gave her the whole plan. I even bought her a Ninja grill, because, again, to me, you've heard me talk about my thermos and my canning, my jarring funnel, and my Monster Mash tool, and my little Bibigo rice bowls, and my everything to me is how do I make adherence easier for you? I don't just give you a diet. I show you, I give you a grocery shopping list and tools to make the food easier and to taste good, the bone broth, and the Monster Mash and all this. I gave her a complete diet, step by step. and I bought everything, and I gave it to her, and I said, "Here you go." The very next day, and you're going to laugh your asses off. Anybody who's ever trained clients, and again, I require a picture of each
Here
meal,
we go.
everything that you eat. I want to see a picture of each meal. Breakfast was half a bagel with cream cheese and a Chobani. Lunch was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And and obviously that wasn't what I recommended, right?
Yeah.
But she's a college student who trains twice a day and has other obligations. And so for her to be able to, buy the food, prep the food, take the food, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I met with Zeke, the coach, the Arizona State coach, and I told him it's 1% information, 99% execution. And I said, these guys are going to need meal prep. And yes, I own a meal prep company. And there's a reason why, because I got tired of making my own food. So I collaborated with a big national supplier, and I took them my menu and I said, can you make this for me? And can I, label it and sell it to my clients? And they said, sure. And the partnership was like
Amazing.
6-7 years ago.
Yep.
And so I have a vertical diet meal prep company where I sell meals to people. You can make them yourself. You can buy them from another company. I don't care. They're convenient and they taste good. Okay. They're not magic, but I told Zeke they need meal prep for a number of reasons. This is something I learned myself many years ago and working with the world's strongest men clients, is that especially when they travel internationally and they try and eat local food and they end up getting, Montezuma's revenge, and they get diarrhea and lose 7 pounds. And that happened to Kennedy Blades when she traveled, to a junior world championship, and she ended up in the hospital with food poisoning.
Shit.
And I had recommended that, like I do, and you see in my videos, when I travel internationally, I take a rolling Coleman cooler with 20 or 30 frozen meals in it, and I check it onto the plane. And when I get off, I grab it out of a baggage claim and I wheel it to my room, which I made sure and planned ahead that it had at least a microwave and a fridge, if not a little kitchenette, like an extended stay. I take my food whenever I travel. I take my thermoses with me, and I don't risk that, and the fact that I don't like the way it feels when I eat airport food or fast food or room service. They cook a lot of that stuff in food, in oils and butters that are just too rich and dense for me, to where I end up with soft stool, or and then next thing you know, I'm sharding myself in the squat rack, and I'm not interested in that.
No,
So
we've all been
I
there.
tell my athletes the same, and I think Brian Shaw is an example of, or one. He was talking about the world's strongest man in Africa one year in Manila, when some of the guys got food poisoning and ended up having to drop out. Same thing happened to Kennedy. And so, I told Zeke at Arizona State that he needed to have meals. And that's what I recommend. If you can't do it yourself, get a meal service. I'll shamelessly say that mine's available.
No, man, we'll
there's
promote
others
it.
out there.
We'll
We
definitely
need you here in Australia, brother.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's meal service in Australia. And but if you can't prep it yourself, now when I didn't have the meal service, I would prep all of my meals the day before and put them in the freezer. And then when I woke up in the morning that I had to depart on my flight, I would get my rolling Coleman cooler and I would load it full of my own frozen meals that I had in snap block Tupperware, and I would check that onto the plane and take it with me. So I've been doing this for at least a decade or more, consistently making sure I have my meal.
You are leading by example, and it's so good to see, because like you've got all the credentials behind you, you've partnered with the right people, and at the end of the day, you've got the results, and a lot of people out there don't. So I think if people can take anything away, is just try, and even if they emulate 10% of what we've spoken about today, they're going to be in a better spot. So
yeah,
we can't thank you enough. And mate, as per last time, before we start to wrap this up, we appreciate your time. We have 10 very random questions just to get a better idea of Stan himself.
I'm terrible at these, but go ahead.
Oh, mate, don't worry. They get weirder and weirder as the time goes on. So I'll let Johnny take it away.
Mr. Stan, favorite takeaway food?
I got to say pizza is probably the one that if I have an itch to scratch, that's the one.
Yeah.
Favorite way to celebrate?
Uh, Probably taking my family to dinner at Cheesecake Factory.
Love it. What city are you born in?
Portland, Oregon.
Your dream car?
I had it, and it wasn't a dream. It was a pain in the ass. I had a Rolls-Royce Phantom.
Yep.
And
Oh.
it got a chip in the windshield that split out, and the windshield replacement was $10,000 for a freaking windshield. Yeah,
Jesus.
I'll never have another one, but I had it. Yeah.
That's cool. Now, your nickname, sir?
The Rhino. Flex Wheeler coined that for me back in 2008.
That's where it came from. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
What question would you like to ask future Stan?
Boy, was it worth it? I got to tell you, I benefited a lot from a lot of the things that I did, but I'll tell you what, grinding away in that gym, all those, now that I'm on the tail end of it and I'm sitting here on this tropical island playing pickleball and swimming every day, I wonder if all those grueling hours in the gym was real, to be honest, it was really worth it. It's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hard work. I don't know.
Have you ever experienced a life-changing event?
I have not. Nothing that was traumatic, and I credit my parents for that. They did a great job, and I grew up in suburbia, middle class suburbia. I haven't experienced a lot of the things that friends of mine have experienced. The early death of a parent, the significant health issue, the military, going to war. I've got friends that were injured, brain damage, and lost body parts, and it's amazing to me. I'm very grateful. I have not had to endure any of the things that a lot of people out there have had to endure, and so I'm very humble and respectful of those people who have had to go through things that I never had to endure.
Your favorite word to say?
Douchebag.
Hey, I like that one.
And you know what's terrible is that my 12-year-old daughter says it now. It's when we're driving, and it's probably better than swearing, right?
Yeah.
It's when we're driving and somebody does something stupid, and I'm like, douchebag. And now my daughter, when somebody does something stupid, she'll say it, and I'm like,
That's gold.
Terrible.
What is your favorite photo of all time?
I like the ones that, oh my God, his name just totally escaped me. I have some black and white photos that I did after I won the Masters Nationals. I flew from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Los Angeles and did a photo shoot. And it's killing me that I can't remember his name. He's one of the most popular photographers that does the covers of all the magazines. It'll come to me when we're off and I'll be embarrassed. But he did some black and white pictures of me, and one of which I used on the cover of Mark Bell's Power magazine. And I really liked those black and white shots that he did. The best photo shoot I ever did, the best I ever looked, was when Flex Wheeler trained me in 2009.
Damn. And now the most important question: how excited are you for July 31 when you come out to Brisbane and come up the sunny coast,
brother.
For the CAPO Nationals 2024?
I've always said I wanted to get back there since I was there many years ago, and I just loved Brisbane, and the guys out there were very receptive, and many of them stayed in touch with me over the years.
Yep.
And went on to accomplish great things in powerlifting, and then went on after that to different careers. And I thought that was fantastic. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. And I've learned a lot since then. I feel like I know a lot more. I've evolved. I've orchestrated my thoughts better and compiled them because the Vertical Diet ebook and everything happened subsequent to my last trip to Australia. And I think I deliver a more concise, more a message and information that is easier for people to utilize.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to have you.
You are the talk of the town, Stan. Capo Nats 2024, kicking off with a bit of a seminar chat with you on the Wednesday, and just literally having you, with your approval, of course, just hanging out at the event for 4 days straight.
Love it.
And see a bit of insight. There's 350 people lifting over the weekend. We got everything from, I think, as young as 10 up to the age of 80 plus lifting.
Yeah.
Across those 4 days, and there's a fair amount of fun happening along the way as well that we look forward to having you be a part of.
I got to tell you that one thing that I'll never do again is judge a meet, because I love these lifters. They're my brothers, sisters, and I'm inclined to white light damn near anything. If their knees bend a little. And I judged a show for Jesse Burdick up in Oakland 1 year. And I was trying to I was really trying to make sure I was getting what I did. But man, some people were hating on me for passing for white lighting some high squats. But these dudes were under 800 plus pounds. Like, I feel it. I've been there, and I'm like, oh, that was a great effort. Okay, white light. and I took some heat on a couple of lifts, on a couple of third lifts that might have been red lights. But I love all these guys, whether I know them personally or not, and I feel them when they're under that bar. I feel them, and I look at their effort, and man, if they're close, I'm inclined to be like, great job, brother. That's a white light right there.
Right.
Well, maybe when because Team Queensland, my team that we represent is lifting, we'll get you to referee those guys and girls to make sure everyone gets through.
Throw me in the
head. And when South Australia and WA are in there, and if they're listening, you read the shit out of them for us, please.
Yeah, if their knees bend, that's a good lift.
Brother, we absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your time again today. And mate, as Johnny said, like, we are ecstatic to have you back out here come July and August, and it's going to be a great weekend of lifting. We'll throw all your links up in the show notes where people can find you, where they can find more about the vertical diet. Can't thank you enough, my friend.
Thanks. You know what's great about this trip is last time I flew out there was like 20 hours and I had an unbelievable jet lag. Now it's just a 4-hour flight from Samoa.
Straight over.
Yeah, it's a direct flight.
Yeah.
How good.
That's going to be great. Mate,
we
can't have you.
I'll come out every weekend.
Hell yeah, let's go, bro.
Don't tempt us. Don't tempt us,
hey,
brother.
Another question. You guys have pickleball in Brisbane?
There is some pickleball. We'll find you some pickleball.
I'll bring my paddle. I've got a bad habit now. It's pickleball. It's my new bad habit. So